What can a journalist tell you? So what I'll try to do is tell you a couple of things you have perhaps not heard and ask a couple of questions that really need answers. So I'm going to address both the prospects and the perspectives, but I'm also going to ask a few questions at the end, just like Dr. Vasu did. Let's move, sir. So let's get into this, A good starting point for us to understand this election is to appreciate Copernicus. The world does not revolve around us. In this election, in this year, 2024, 64 countries are going to elections this year, which means 63 countries other than India are going to vote. Nearly half the population on earth is going to cast ballots this year and will have an ink mark on their finger. And more than all that, only 1 out of 3 elections in these 64 countries is being seen as being really free and fair. So that's something we need to keep in mind. Let's also look at this. 8 out of the 10 biggest countries on earth will vote this year. 8 out of 10. You can call it the Great Pole Waltz. Bangladesh had an election just a couple of months ago where the entire opposition boycotted the election. And over the next few months, the United States, Indonesia, South Africa, Britain, Russia, all of them will have elections. Some analysts, really fine great scholars, are calling this year, 2024, as the biggest test for democracy. The biggest test for democracy since democracy began. But all things considered, India is still the biggest of the countries going to the elections. One point I should make before I really get into the story. In all these slides, this is not a WhatsApp speech, this is not picked from Wikipedia. In all these slides, you will see the sources at the bottom of the slides. So you can go and cross-check all the information for everything here. Okay, that's a good caveat to have in the age of WhatsApp. So what we should consider is that although 64 countries are going to elections, India is the biggest of the countries going to the elections this year. It's bigger than all the next 7 countries put together. It's bigger than all these next 7 countries. But as you can see from the final number there, in terms of fairness, India's elections enjoy a score of just 0.53 on a scale of 0 to 1, which means that's the state of our democracy in 2024. And I can tell you, I don't know how many of you know, but some opposition parties in India considered boycotting this election in protest against what's been happening in this country. So therefore, on the face of it, it might seem as if the results of this 18th general election, this is the 18th, the way we have been conditioned, in our minds, it seems as if this is the first election going to take place. But we've had 17 elections before this. So on the face of it, it might look as if the 18th general election is a foregone conclusion. If you look at these 2 graphs, they go in completely opposite directions for both parties, especially BJP and Congress. Since 1984, which means in the last 40 years, the vote share, the first graph there, the vote share of the BJP has jumped from 8% to nearly 37%, which is a 5-fold jump in vote share. And from just 2 seats in the Lokasabha in 1984, the BJP has gone on to 303 in 2019, which means in the last 40 years, the BJP's seat share has increased by 10,000%, believe it or not. Therefore, these very extraordinary comments from the big wigs of the BJP, they seem to talk as if the outcome is already decided, that there's nothing to discuss, that it's a done and done deal. And there are a lot of experts and analysts and psephologists and many in the media who talk the same language. But as I said earlier, politics is a little like cricket. It's not over till the last ball is bowled, till the last vote is counted. When Mr. Amit Shah says that NDA will cross 400 by 1 p.m. on June 4th, you really must wonder about the timing. We should not forget that the NDA had 352 in the last election, 352. So, when you look at the first, sorry, sir. When you look at the first quote, this kind of confidence of 400, is it really reflected in the actions and words of Mr. Modi in the last few weeks? Does it really convey what Mr. Shah is saying? Again, look at this extraordinary statement. Take it in writing, Mr. Modi says, NDA will break all records. Congress won't even get as many seats as Rahul Gandhi's age, which is 53. Actually, only once, as Dr. Vasu said, only once since 1947 or 1951, only once since 1951 in its past 17 general elections has any one party got more than 400, and that was the Congress in 1984 when it got 414. But that was after Indira Gandhi's assassination. BJP is now talking of NDA getting 400, which means an alliance of BJP plus 38 other allies. You know, there are 39 allies in the NDA, so it's BJP plus 38 who are hoping to get 400. Whether the target of 400 will be met or not, we will know in exactly 16 days from now. But before I move to the next graphic, here is something for you to consider. The 1984 elections in which Congress got 414 seats were conducted in 5 days. 5 days. This year's election, despite the technology, despite India's money, despite digital India, despite this, that, and the other, it's taken 7 weeks. I think you know the answer why. Even the global media, the Modi government, the BJP constantly is carping about how the global media deals with India, deals with the BJP. And generally they have a lot of critical comments on the way democracy is going in this country, the way authoritarianism is creeping in this country, and so on and so forth. But on the issue of the 2024 elections and the outcome, they are all on the same page. The international media is more or less on the same page as the BJP and the Indian media in saying that it's going to be a cakewalk for Mr. Modi and party. Even critical newspapers like the Guardian and the New York Times are saying that the BJP's return to power is imminent. In fact, the Guardian uses the word it's inevitable. You can see the word inevitable at the bottom of it. Opinion polls, as Dr. Vasu will tell you, opinion polls and exit polls are generally a bit of a joke in this country, with all due respect to Dr. Vasu. But this year, what you find is that every single opinion poll, there have been 12 opinion polls so far, every opinion poll has predicted a BJP win and an NDA getting in excess of 300. Every opinion poll says NDA will get more than 300. One of them, by Mukesh Ambani's company, News 18, one of those opinion polls says that it will actually get 411, 3 short of 414. So Mukesh Ambani's News 18 says 411 for the BJP NDA. But let's look at this graphic. This is produced by Decoder. And I invite many of you to go and check this out. This is the new app and website developed by Prannoy Roy, the man who made opinion polling sexy in this country. Dr. Roy's poll of polls shows that NDA will get 345 and 143 is what the India Alliance will get. So which means there's a clear gap of 200 seats between NDA and the India Alliance according to these opinion polls. Let's look at this next graphic, which is basically something you must really hear. It's a video. We were having some problems with listening to this, but yeah. One of the opinion pollsters who has had some success in these last few years in this country is a company called Axis My India. It's run by a guy called Pradeep Gupta. And Axis My India has done a number of opinion polls for India Today and Aaj Tak, which have been generally very accurate or close to being accurate. But its chief, Pradeep Gupta, the chief of Axis My India, even Pradeep Gupta says that he does not see any big upheaval in this election. He does not see any big upheaval in this election is the exact words he uses in Hindi, ulat fair, as we say in Hindi, ulat fair. I'll do something else. My apologies for this because we've had some issues with play the first one. Yeah. Let's listen to this video. Aste haki saku.
क्या आपको लगता है कि प्रधानमंत्री मोदी तीसरी बार आ रहे हैं? कम से कम सीटें भी तो भी इतनी हो जाएंगी कि सरकार बन जाएगी, या आपको बहुत बड़ा उलटफेर दिख रहा है? मैं बहुत बड़ा उलटफेर तो कम से कम नहीं दिख रहा, इतना जरूर मैं कह सकता हूँ। और मेरा हमेशा से ये मानना रहा है एक्सेस माई इंडिया में कि जब तक लास्ट वोट ना पड़ जाए, जब तक मेरे पे नंबर मुझे नहीं पता तो मैं कैसे तुम्हारी विनम्रता से साथ में आपको और आपके दर्शकों से हाथ जोड़ के विनती करके कहता हूँ, जो मेरे पास आज है नहीं मैं आपको कैसे बता दूं। जी, लेकिन मैं आपकी जो लाइन पकड़ूंगा वो यही है जो आप कह रहे हैं कि कोई अप्रत्याशित इस तरह का नतीजा आपको दिखाई नहीं दे रहा। मुझे ऐसा नहीं लगता कि कोई बहुत बड़ा ऐसा हो जाएगा या वो हो जाएगा, मुझे ऐसा कुछ नहीं लगता।
So when you listen to this, what he's essentially saying is that much of what you hear on WhatsApp, on Facebook, in the newspapers, on mainstream channels, what he's saying is essentially that the BJP is going to come back, the NDA is going to form the government. That's the long and short of what he's saying. But as Dr. Yogendra Yadav, who worked with Dr. Vasu on the previous opinion poll, as Dr. Yogendra Yadav said very beautifully a long time back, the only thing worse than getting an opinion poll wrong is to getting it right. You should never get an opinion poll, right. So therefore, everyone thinks that what Pradeep Gupta is saying is exactly what, illa agala andre bitpidi. We need to come to slide 11. So therefore, that's Pradeep Gupta of Axis My India who's saying that sorry for all this. This. So therefore, success has many fathers. A lot of people are arguing for the BJP and NDA. So therefore, this is Gaurav Dalmia, a respected industrialist. Many people are writing now on why the BJP keeps winning and why it wins so big. This piece by Gaurav Dalmia, a leading industrialist, kind of captures the general tone of the argument in favor of the BJP NDA. It talks of Mr. Modi uniting Hindus. It talks of Mr. Modi giving a sense of identity to India. It talks of the BJP expanding its voter base to include SCs and STs and women and so on and so forth. It talks of more and more Muslims voting for BJP. And it also talks of the BJP making inroads from the cities into semi-rural or rural localities in the countryside. So this is one argument which is being made of why the BJP is rising and has risen so much in the last 40 years. Next, sir. But this is a great quote to remember. Let's just drag it from this end. Okay. James Reston used to be the New York Times correspondent in India in the early 50s. He went on to become the executive editor of the New York Times. And James Reston, who looked at India's first election, had this outstanding quote about predicting elections. He said that an election is a secret meeting between a voter and his or her democracy, and it's sacrilege to pry into that. That's what James Reston said. But that has not stopped many of us from trying to predict elections, from trying to see what happens. So this, for example, the next one, sir. This is Piyush Goyal. A video played Manat Beda, Anil Kumar Ore. Let's forget the video. Okay, because
my surveys started again the same time, August, September. We have expanded the scope of the survey across the length and breadth of the country. We did 540,000 respondents.
Right.
I think it's unheard of anywhere in the world that 540,000 people selected randomly through the computer have been asked over a 30-minute physical interview on tablet,
right,
and reported straight into the system,
right,
to ensure its sanctity. what they believe about the government and various questions, inflation, economy, the situation about their business, situation about the political scene, who they will vote for. I'm happy to at least share the headline number that came
No,
out.
don't play it.
The BJP looks to be between 297 and 303 seats by itself in the 2019.
297 to 303, that's very, very precise.
297 to 303 by ourselves, the BJP will get in the 2019 Lok Sabha election.
2019 Lok Sabha elections, you're saying 297 to 303.
The extraordinary part of this claim by Piyush Goyal months before the 2019 election is that the BJP got exactly 303. Exactly 303. And this year, the same Mr. Piyush Goyal is predicting 370 for the BJP and 400 for the NDA. Of course, for the BJP, 370 has a lot of emotions attached to it because of Article 370. That's one key reason why they are repeating 370. But that is what is one of the many claims being made. So regardless of what James Reston said about prying into an election, most of us try and do it. Next one, sir. More often than not, Illa, I think we need to reduce it. Illa, so this is Dr. S.L. Bhairappa, the renowned Kannada writer and academic and a thinker of the city. Even Dr. S.L. Bhairappa is beginning to have some doubts about which way this election is going to go. He says Dr. Bhairappa's political leanings are no longer a secret. He once actually said a long time back that Mr. Modi should get 3 terms. So Dr. Bhairappa now says that the BJP is not in a good shape in Karnataka and at best will get only 14 seats. He said 50-50. Next one, sir. But Dr. Bhairappa does not give us a national figure. But there is no dearth of people who are now predicting predicting some really dire things for the BJP and NDA. And many in the mainstream media, the mainstream media is now virtually an extension of the Prime Minister's office, virtually an extension of the BJP IT cell. So many in the media are predicting what the BJP is saying. But what you find is that politicians with their ear to the ground, real hardcore politicians like Mamta Banerjee and Sharad Pawar, they are now talking of these numbers. They are talking of 200 for the BJP, 230, 240 for the NDA. So that's the next one, sir. Here is Mr. Rahul Gandhi, a figure most of us kind of can relate to.
पहले नरेंद्र मोदी कह रहे थे 400 पार, सुना होगा, अब बोल रहे हैं 400 पार, अब 150 पार नहीं बोल रहे हैं, क्योंकि उनको मालूम पड़ गया है, नब्ज पकड़ ली है देश की जनता ने। दुनिया में, हिंदुस्तान में छोड़ो, नरेंद्र मोदी छोड़ो, दुनिया में कोई शक्ति नहीं है जो इसको रद्द कर सके, इसको फाड़ के फेंक सके।
That really invokes a laugh in most people. I don't understand why. But, that's a really interesting, psychological issue India is facing now, among all the other issues India is facing. But, here is Mr. Rahul Gandhi, perhaps the only person who's been categorical about which way the RSS is leading this country. The only person who's been categorical about the way the opposition should perform. So Mr. Rahul Gandhi has had a real revival in some senses because of his Bharat Jodo Yatra, going from east to west, north to south. He's had some kind of a fillip which has come from the Supreme Court's verdict on the electoral bonds and so on and so forth. So in some senses, Rahul Gandhi is a changed man. And riding on the back of a number of issues which we don't hear of in Mysore, price rise, unemployment, corruption, crony capitalism, all of these issues, especially communalism, riding on the back of all these issues, Rahul Gandhi is now saying that the BJP is not sure of even getting 150. It might seem like a bit of an exaggeration, and that's perhaps what invokes a laugh, but he says Mr. Modi will not return as Prime Minister. Well, let's look at this. There's no dearth of surveys in this country as we speak. This is a so-called survey of the RSS, whose originality, authenticity, veracity I can't vouch for. This is a survey of the RSS doing the rounds. Somebody has most beautifully put the words Jai Shri Ram on top to give it a stamp of authority. But this survey of the RSS is doing the rounds, and a number of people have commented on these numbers. And this survey predicts 214 for the BJP in the country in 2024, 224. And in Karnataka, according to this survey, which we don't need to worry too much about, they are talking of 6 as BJP's score in Karnataka. But I can tell you that one IAS officer who's very close to the RSS, he told me when I called him last week, he told me that the RSS feels that Modi will end up with about 240 seats, and that with the allies will form the government. It would have been okay if this gentleman had just stopped there, but this IAS officer added another sentence. He said the leader will form the government if the allies prefer him. It's up to you to think about it. Next one. So this is now a familiar figure in India. Again, I don't know why it invokes a laugh.
The day after all the phases are complete, I think the BJP will be somewhere around 220 and 230. That's my feeling.
So you're putting the BJP total at the end of all the voting rounds somewhere between 220 and 230. Is that right?
That's right. That is, a very generous kind of a reading of the situation. It could even go a little below 200.
Well, that's the kind of prognosis people are offering. 200, 230, 220, 240. Yashwant Sinha, again a former finance minister, part of the BJP RSS, whose son was part of Mr. Modi's team. Yashwant Sinha, who's also become a critic of Mr. Modi and BJP. Yashwant Sinha says that the BJP will end up with around 200. This is a really top-class graphic to look at. It really exemplifies everything that we need to talk about. Here is a man called M. Nageshwar Rao. He's a former IPS officer. He was appointed CBI director in the middle of the night to prevent the Rafale scam being probed by the CBI. Mr. Nageshwar Rao used to be a cheerleader. He used to be part of the establishment. He's now turned against the establishment. He is now putting out this tweet citing intelligence sources. Citing intelligence sources, Nageshwar Rao, formerly an IPS officer, he says that the BJP will end up with 227, and with BJP getting 12 in Karnataka. Next one, sir. But do the stock markets know something that we don't? For a couple of weeks now, the stock market has been in a bit of a tizzy, and you can see that this is the biggest time, this year has been the biggest time that the foreign investors have withdrawn money from this country, reflecting somewhat the uncertainty that is in this election. One final video we should listen to.
के माध्यम से मैं आप तक देश का सबसे बड़ा सच पहुंचाना चाहता हूं, जो आज दबाया और छुपाया जा रहा है। और वो सच ये है कि इस लोकसभा चुनाव ने करवट ले ली है। पिछले कई हफ्तों में मैं कर्नाटका गया, तेलंगाना, छत्तीसगढ़, राजस्थान, पंजाब, हरियाणा, उत्तर प्रदेश और बिहार, और 35 साल से चुनाव देखने के अनुभव के आधार पर मैं आपको बता रहा हूं, आज की तारीख में बीजेपी मेजॉरिटी नहीं ला रही। बीजेपी 272 से बहुत नीचे है, और बीजेपी सहयोगियों के साथ एनडीए भी मेजॉरिटी से नीचे हो सकता है।
Well, no person in India, I can tell you, no person in India has stuck his neck out more than Professor Yogendra Yadav in the last few weeks. Nobody. On channel after channel, YouTube and mainstream channels, Professor Yadav, who's a really fine cephalologist, social scientist, political scientist, he has gone out of the way to predict a doomsday scenario for the BJP. And this is what he says, that the BJP and NDA are well below the majority mark. So all these surveys and claims, which we need to take with a pinch of salt, maybe a ton of salt, but what they underline is basically what Dr. Vasu mentioned, that there is a contest unlike what we've seen previously, that there is a fight unlike what we've seen previously. And this is something the BJP has not been very, very keen to acknowledge. In fact, it would be a really huge surprise if the BJP loses or if the NDA does not form the government. Look at the number of things that have happened in the last few years, especially in the last couple of years. You know, the number of IT, ED raids, the way in which bank accounts of the Congress have been frozen, the way in which the governor's office has been turned into a basically BJP office, the way in which the Ram temple was inaugurated long before it was ready, the way in which the G20 summit was projected as a BJP event, the way in which the World Cup was sought to be presented as a BJP event. You know, the BJP has had a capture of the media like never before. So if the BJP loses despite all this, that is the real surprise for us. That is the real surprise. This is the thing that most people now believe has caused a huge problem for the BJP, the slogan of 400 par. The slogan of getting 400 seats is what many people believe has led to the consolidation of Muslim and scheduled caste votes, especially in the north of the country. You know, in fact, in Maharashtra, they have a vote bank now called MAMO, Muslim and Maharashtrians. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that has really caused panic among several voters, millions of voters in the north of the country, especially because of the contribution of Anant Kumar Hegde, who said that the BJP wants 400 seats to change the constitution. After Mr. Hegde said this, a couple of more BJP lawmakers or lawless makers have said the same thing. But there have been a number of variations on why the BJP wants 400. Does it want 400 to build the temple in Mathura? Does it want 400 to, for Mr. Modi to prevent the Babri lock being put on the Ram temple? Does it, as Mr. Modi says, does he want 400 seats to prevent the return of Article 370? So this is something that is really, Amit Shah says that, we want 400 to prevent, to take back POK, etc., etc. So this is something that is called real panic in the north of the country, something that's not reflected in the south, which is that underprivileged, poor voters are really swinging away from the BJP or having question marks because of the fear that the BJP might rewrite the constitution, might really remove reservations and so on and so forth. Which is why also in Rahul Gandhi's hand, a red copy of the Constitution of India has become such a potent weapon, because this is a real issue in the north of the country, north and east of the country. So what has happened because of that is this. Because of the backfiring of the 400 par, 400 par slogan, the use of 400 par by the BJP has come to a complete zero. This is a set of numbers produced by the Congress party's Praveen Chakravarti. It shows you how Mr. Modi was mentioning 400 par at least 6 to 8 times a week. 6 to 8 times a week in the fourth week of March, and it's now nearly zero. So this seems to have backfired big time. What the BJP has not been able to explain, and what Dr. Vasu somehow touched upon, is where will the BJP get these 400 seats from? If you look at this excellent graphic, all the orange numbers are states where the BJP got 100% seats. It got 100% in Haryana, Gujarat, Bihar, Himachal, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Delhi. If you look at the blue states, those blue states where it got between 85 and 90% seats. So where is the BJP going to get the 400 from? Nobody is telling us that. They're just giving you this number of 400 plus, but where are they going to get these numbers from? Mr. Amit Shah says that he's looking at these 5 states. He's looking at West Bengal, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Bihar. But looking at how desperate some of the BJP's tactics have been, this is clearly more out of hope than reality. Next one, sir. So a big issue, the big elephant in the room that Dr. Vasu perhaps did not touch upon enough is this. We may have great trust in the Election Commission, we may have great sanctity about the democratic process, but this is an issue. This is an issue. This is the elephant in the room. EC has joined a long list of institutions which have crumbled in the last few years. It now finds voters magically after votes have been cast. Look at this difference. Nearly 1 crore voters have been found in a number of states. In fact, in Andhra Pradesh, which has the biggest change here, you can see what's happening. New voters are being found. In fact, the Election Commission refuses to release data, which is to be released regularly, instantly on what has happened booth-wise. So what is an issue is the Election Commission. It now finds voters magically. It refuses to provide data instantly. It resists attempts to enforce accountability, and it publishes completely questionable data. It ignores the ruling party's excesses, and it attacks the opposition. So therefore, could the Election Commission come to the BJP's rescue? It's a blunt question, but must be asked. I think this nonsense has gone on for too long. And you will understand this nonsense a bit more when you look at these very strange incidents in this country. Extraordinary incidents of what's called voter suppression, where a candidate withdraws from the race, another joins the BJP. Candidates have already cast their nomination papers, where voters are thrashed in their booths and sent out and prevented from voting, where CCTV cameras are switched off for several minutes and go down storing EVMs, where you see rejections of nomination papers across the board. So therefore, this is a very valid question to ask. Is there something happening that none of these opinion pollsters, none of us analysts, none of us journalists can capture and understand? Is there something happening, in this process? Here's an excellent cartoon from the Economic Times newspaper, which is a kind of a preparatory process for one nation, one election. I've already, we've all discussed, we all know what the media is doing. This is the media. You'll understand how the media has played a very active role. It's almost a BJP worker, chamchas. He used the word cronies, I'll say chamchas. Okay? This is the way, according to News Laundry, this is the way debates are being shaped on television every single night. 52% of the debates every night is against the opposition. 27% of them are in favor of Mr. Modi. Just 1% or 1.5% is about jobs and stuff like that, or education. So this is the role that the media is playing. So which is why all these great people are now talking of the importance of this election. This is Dr. Ramchandra Guha, and on the opposite side of the fence is Dattatreya Hosabale, who is the General Secretary of the... So the Modi government has celebrated the 75th anniversary of independence as if it's a North Indian event. Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. I think 90% of South Indians don't understand what it means, but they have celebrated Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. And we think we are the world's oldest democracy. We think we are the world's greatest democracy. We call ourselves the mother of democracy. But these are the beautiful words global institutions and think tanks and newspapers are using to describe the state of India's democracy in 2024. Partially free, elected autocracy, flawed democracy, illiberal democracy, elections-only democracy, and a democracy in worsening decay. These words should make us think. These words should make us think, and here is an excellent graphic telling you really what are the priorities of the two parties, the two main parties. They are not the only two parties. There are hundreds more. These are the numbers from the manifestos of the two parties. The BJP manifesto is 76 pages. It has 67 references to Mr. Modi. It has 2 references to jobs. This is the Congress manifesto, 48 pages, 36 references to jobs, and you can see the difference. In fact, the Congress manifesto has 0 words on the Hindi ko bola onchuru. If you can see this graphic closely, the Congress manifesto has 0 references to Muslims, 0. In fact, the BJP's manifesto has 1 reference to Muslims. Next one, sir. But Mr. Modi is a bit like Don Quixote, if you know the novel. He can detect patterns that none of us can see. He can see all kinds of things. And Mr. Modi now says that the Congress manifesto looks like the Muslim League manifesto. He says that the Congress wants to take away Mangal Sutras from Hindus and give it to Muslims. He says, Mr. Modi says, the Congress wants to take your 2 buffaloes, it will take one of those buffaloes and give it to the others. You know, he basically is saying that the Congress will rewrite the Constitution of India in favor of Muslims. But look at this extraordinary claim, extraordinary claim. This is the world's largest read newspaper, Dainik Jagran. It is one of the key players and promoters of Hindutva in the north of the country. This is the lead headline, where Mr. Modi says, Congress हिंदुओं के दूसरे दर्ज का नागरिक बनाना चाहती है. Congress wants to make Hindus second-class citizens. That's the kind of propaganda being exposed to. That's the kind of hateful messages we are being, told over and over every single day. Mr. Modi says all these things against Muslims. Next day he appears on television and says, I don't do Hindu-Muslim stuff. And the third day he reappears and says the same things. This is something we really need to consider, because there's something else I want to tell you at the end of this. I'm going to come to the last couple of slides. This is what an NDA victory might result in. Manchur Kelgade, sir. Yeah, this one. Yeah. Yeah, this is fine. Nila, you need to go up. Yeah. So this is what a BJP NDA victory might look like. Dr. Vasu referred to what might happen. These are some slightly more pointed, more specific things that could happen. Next year is the 100th anniversary of the RSS. Does the RSS really want the BJP to be out of power in its 100th year? Could we see, could a victory result in some kind of continuity? Will it be seen as some kind of validation that has happened over these last 10 years? Could it result in more fear and hatred in this country? Could citizenship become an increasingly problematic issue in this country? Could we see more authoritarianism, more majoritarianism in this country? This is what really an NDA BJP victory looks like. And this is a great, next one, sir. This is a great piece of commentary by Pranab Bardhan, one of the world's top Indologists, an Indian who teaches at Cornell University. He draws the essential difference between what's happening in the West and what's happening in India. Dr. Pranab Bardhan says that across the world, right-wing demagogues get support from less educated, rural, and older populations. He says that's the exact opposite happening in India. The educated, the urban, the aspirational youth are supporting the BJP. So that's his take on this. On the other hand, what could an India victory mean? Dr. Vasu spoke of social justice being platformed. You can see that through the Congress messaging, where it talks of reservations, where it talks of jobs, where it talks of equity and equality. It talks of a whole lot of things. But it also has a couple of downsides. Could it result in the balkanization of this country with so many forces? Could it result in some kind of a fragmentation of our thinking? Okay, next one, sir. So, yeah, last one. Yeah, this is the very last one, not to worry. These are the final questions I had in my mind. This is something we all need to look at. What are these questions? I think what this election has showed us is the saturation of the BJP in some ways. If all of these things, if the BJP loses, let's assume, which is unlikely, if the BJP loses, what after Mr. Modi? Who after Mr. Modi? It's a question. We in our families, in our organizations, we all have a succession plan, but the BJP does not have a succession plan. I don't know how many of you noticed what Kejriwal said last week. Mr. Kejriwal said that Mr. Modi is essentially seeking votes for Amit Shah in this election, not for himself, that he will vacate office when he turns 75 next September. Okay, so does the BJP have a succession plan? Does it really have any hope once Mr. Modi is out of the picture? That's one. Secondly, I think this is a very good question and I like it very much. Will Karnataka show the way in this election? Just like it did in the assembly election. In 2023, in the assembly election, Karnataka showed something remarkable, which showed that there are two Indias in this country. It's not just one India. It showed how the urban, prosperous, connected, literate people were so distinct and different from the people in the rest of the country. And therefore, the Congress came up with those guarantees, which is now spread across the country. So could Karnataka show the way? One. Two, if the BJP loses in Karnataka, could we see the explosion of the BJP or implosion of the BJP in Karnataka? Because it has national ramifications. Three, Yogi Adityanath, will he stay as Chief Minister after June 4th? Mr. Kejriwal says he will not. He says if Modi and BJP come back to power, they're going to remove Yogi Adityanath from the scene. Will India ever be the same for Muslims again, given the kind of hatred, given the kind of hate speeches, given the kind of messaging that has come from the Prime Minister's office? Will India ever be the same for Muslims once again? Isn't that something for us to consider when they are nearly 15% of this population? Which seems to be something that the Prime Minister is not thinking much about. Is this India's last proper election? This might shock you, but this is the question a number of analysts, global scholars have asked around the world, whether this is India's last general election, proper election. Christophe Jaffrelot is the world's most renowned Indologist. He says that if the BJP wins or loses this election, it could result in this being the very last proper election. And finally, if the BJP loses, will there be a peaceful transition? We have seen what happened in the United States 4 years ago. We have seen the kind of forces that have been let loose in this country. Will we have a peaceful transition if the BJP loses? So these are my prospects, perspectives, and a few questions. And thank you for your time.
Dr. Vasu traveled from Bangalore to join us here. We are very privileged to have you with us, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you for, sharing the two, like you said, you have two hands. While you shared all the data, you made sure that you kept it separate from your political views. And I think that's a great thing. We can have differing political views, but keep them separate. He did a great job of that. Thank you, sir. And our own Krishna Prasad, sir, he, as usual, thrilled and enlightened us. Thank you very much. And once again, thanks everybody for joining us today.